Welcome back, 12 and a half after the hour, and time for us to go behind the headlines. Speaking of Legalize It, and the Atlantic magazine just took a look at marijuana legalization in a piece that was posted today, and I wanted to take a look at this for a couple of reasons, not the least of which are some of the pot shots, pardon the pun, that it took against the Oregon marijuana movement. And it talked about, of course, it talked in glowing terms about how Washington and Colorado passed marijuana legalization in 2012. And then they go on to, slam Oregon. This is one of their quotes. An Oregon effort would almost certainly have prevailed too if proponents there hadn't overreached with toxic legislative language that scared off donors and earned ridicule from local media. Further down the piece, meanwhile, activists expected to get referenda on full legalization with tax and regulate language on the ballot in 2016 in states like Oregon, Maine, Alaska, and California that already have medical programs in place. The failed Oregon campaign would have effectively recast the state liquor board as a massive pot retailer, and the ballot initiative's preamble might have been plucked right out of Richard Linklater's 1993 high school party flick Dazed and Confused, right down to its mention of George Washington growing hemp plants at Mount Vernon. That debacle reflects the enduring presence of more extreme voices within a constituency that has historically kept one foot outside the traditional political channels. The man behind it was Paul Stanford, a medical marijuana titan who normal executive director Alan St. Pierre describes as having a, quote, rap sheet longer than your arm, end quote. Stanford pleaded guilty to tax evasion in 2011, one of the several scrapes with the IRS. Reformers are worried he'll try again in 2014, rather than waiting for the higher turnout that comes with a presidential race. So, I wanted to take a moment and comment on this because I'm not going to dispute, anything about Measure 80 and how it was a hempster's wet dream kind of a bill. And I myself criticized a lot of the problems with it. But I don't understand why this piece has to go back and rehash what happened Oregon 2012 in the frame of what it was talking about for moving forward, other than this paragraph about reformers are worried he'll try again in 2014. And, love him or hate him, good or bad, whatever you want to say, Paul Stanford is a true believer. He truly believes in what he's doing, and he does this for wanting to end this mad prohibition of hemp and cannabis. I absolutely know that down in my heart. Now, would he also make a buck in legalization? Sure, but so would a lot of people. But that's not the point that I want to make about this. The point I want to make about this is, why is anybody worried about Paul Stanford or anybody moving forward in 2014? I just don't understand why that's even a problem. Let's say he goes forward in 2014, gets on the ballot and wins. Great, then great. We got legalization 2 years early. But if he gets out there, gets on the ballot and loses, why does that make a move for 2016 any more devastating than the loss in 2012 already is? If Paul Stanford loses in 2012 with something silly, comes back in 2014 with something maybe better written and also loses, the effort that comes forth in 2016 can at least say, hey, look, we're not him. We're the other guys. Here's something different. And you can capitalize on that. And the activism and the energy that will be brought forth by people trying to get something on the ballot through 2014 can only further the conversation, can only get more people talking about legalization. It really seems to me the only danger here is that somebody trying for 2016 might pour their money into an educational campaign in 2013 that ends up passing someone else's legalization in 2014. And I would hate to have to think that that's the motivation behind trying to trash Paul Stanford or trying to dissuade anybody from moving forward in 2014. Why not both? Why not run a campaign of education aiming toward 2016 and let the, if you want to call it fringe, edge of the reform movement run something in 2014? If they win, great. If they don't, you can play against that. You can triangulate as being the sensible alternative. I see it as a win-win situation. I don't understand why we need to denigrate anybody's chances of trying to get on the ballot or make a change here. If they're competing against each other, if two groups are going for 2014, that's a different story. Now you're cannibalizing your own resources. Now you're making it a confusing educational effort. But if one group is dead set on 2014 and another one's dead set on 2016, both go for, with my blessing. Go for it. Let's get legalization on the ballot as many times as we can. Now, some other things that are really good about this Atlantic piece, and we'll post the link to this in our chat room here, talks about how politicians now, some big-name politicos like New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, California's Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, and Newark, New Jersey Mayor Cory Booker are starting to stake out some liberal stances on drug policy. My congressional representative, Earl Blumenauer, who, when he was in the state legislature, pushed through the first decrim in the nation, 1973, he talks about how there's been a sea change now. We're going to pass a point of no return. So it's become very, very good here. And they also mention Beto O'Rourke in El Paso winning a primary victory over an 8-term incumbent, Sylvester Reyes, and now he's in the House of Representatives, and he had a very pro-marijuana legalization stance. And it also talks about a lot of the demographic trends that I have been noting, how the GOP is becoming increasingly white, minority, and aging population. They need minority voters, they need younger voters, they need women voters, and they can use this issue to their advantage. But they also point out in the Atlantic article how Democrats have a constituency now, in how some of the unions, the labor unions, are now starting to see the availability of unionized marijuana industry, and how NAACP and other minority rights groups are getting involved in the issue. So it's becoming a bipartisan on maybe both of the younger, more progressive sides of the aisle, of both the right and the left, that are starting to coalesce into a very pro-marijuana constituency. Now, there's still some work to do on this. It's going to take a while before we get to the point where everybody is going to be able to sing Kumbaya, hold hands, and get something passed at the federal level. But even in Florida, they're starting to look at this. Rand Paul is starting to stand out on the Republican side as having a powerful voice for ending the war on drugs. Mark Kleiman, who's now the pot czar in Washington state, warns there could be a backlash. He warns that if Colorado replaces Mexico as the source of American marijuana, that would be something that could cause the feds to really rethink how hard they go against these legalized marijuana states. But I like his quote at the end where he says, quote, "On the other hand, California is already a clusterfuck and the voters don't care," end quote. I don't know about you, Brian, but I'm for a pot czar who's unafraid to say clusterfuck.
Man, we've been dropping F-bombs lately. I don't know. Residuals from F-bomb Friday.
I guess so.
Let's smoke a bowl.
Take some medicine for that.